and other good things I did on the board when I was on the board. I was made by Lee, and I had a lot of time for Lee. He made me, appointed me in charge of safety, and with the Hobart coming along, etc., the safety officers were really in a situation whereby they were wide open. If anything happened, my view was if a coroner, and nothing had ever happened prior to that, but if a coroner ever asked what was their capacity to be able to adjudicate on the safety of whatever part of the vessel, they had no background. So I instigated an educational program. John Hornby from Yachting New South Wales was very hairy-fairy about it, and finally I ended up with something like 50 or 60 people applied to do this. And so I had a meeting down here, and we went through every section of what they had to adjudicate on, and John Hornby said, okay, you've got to have it as a closed book. I said, no, you've got to have it as an open book. And he said, well, you won't get any encouragement at all. Yachting New South Wales won't accept it, and Yachting Australia won't accept it. I said, well, bad luck, the CYC will. We've got a big race coming up. We might need to have a lot of boats in a year's time, and I need the safety officer, so we're going to have it. So if your blokes can't end it. Anyhow, at the last moment, he changed his mind. We had our examination, and that's how the club then got something like $20 million insurance on the safety officers if there's anything happen. The other good thing I did in the club was when I was a director, and David Fuller was a Commodore, and he decided, because Maury was in charge of the youth sailing academy, and I won't mention any names, but as you know, there were some adamant people who demanded that we shut it down and get rid of it as bleeding the club dry and all this crap, and there was no support, etc. So I said, okay, there's got to be support for this. So why don't we get the members to agree to it by putting their money where their mouth is and supporting it by just putting a $25 fee on the membership form. I said, you've diddled it with the other thing, with the with the fee to the Yachting Association. So why don't we do this? And this year we'll have $25 added to the membership fee, optional, knowing that nobody reads the thing. Anyhow, away they went, and we got about a 75–80% support. Then all of a sudden, the Wallara Sailing Club never got the Sailing Academy. It was done, lay down misère. So without that happening, we wouldn't have had that Sailing Academy, because it was a lay down misère. They were sold, and that caused another furore.
Now you've mentioned a few names there, like Merv, Davies and Gordon Marshall, who are wonderful contributors to this club.
That's correct.
Amazing contributors, and people that don't really know the history of those guys would never understand how much effort they put in to make the club what it is. But what are some other characters that you've seen throughout your time here at the club that have sort of made this club what it is?
Well, Merv
good and bad.
Merv was the main contributor. He got together with Olin Stevens and a couple of others and formulated the original IOR rule. And people don't realise that, because we had the CCA rule and the RORC rule, and never the twain would meet. So they got together and they had to have a yacht that would be able to compete on both sides, and this is the way we should go. So they formulated that rule, and one of the greatest evenings I had in my life was Olin Stevens came to Australia, and he came to have a look at CYCA, and I'll always remember that. And he had a look at CYCA, and he looked at me and he said, "Oh, what a wonderful interpretation of my plan. Yes, you'll have to learn to sail it a bit better." Well, of course,
this was CYCA 2.
CYCA 1.
CYCA 1.
CYCA 1.
Right, okay.
And so I thought, so that evening, Merv said, look, we're having dinner at the club tonight, would you like to join us? And I said, oh, I'd love to. So I met Olin Stevens, and Merv got up to go out the back at one part of the evening, and Olin said, that's a wonderful young man, that man. He is brilliant. I hope this country appreciates, and Yachting appreciates, what he's done for them and what he does for them. And of course, coming from Olin Stevens, you couldn't.
High praise.
That was marvellous.
And Gordon's contribution, that was enormous too.
Gordon, I met Gordon after we'd taken over Arrowsmiths. Lynn Bolton came with Arrowsmiths and worked for the club. I started to take her out, and we were great friends. And we were at Lynn's party one night. She was having up at Vaucluse. And Gordon, I hadn't met Gordon before really, and Gordon was there and he said, John, I've come up with a new form of navigation. The navigation, I'm using aircraft tables. And in those days we were using Board of Trade tables, and I used to take a navigator called, who used to teach navigation as a navigator, and he was, you know, it used to take forever. You had Norris tables and all these tables and everything. So I said, oh, that'd be wonderful, because I've just bought a copy of these books. And he said, look, I can do it lying down the bunk in a flash. So he said, I'm thinking, do you think the club would be interested in it? I said, well, I'm interested. You sign me up as a first person. I'll be interested, Gordon. And so he started the navigation classes, and I did them twice with him. And as a matter of fact, at home, and I've got to give them to somebody, Gordon, when he passed on, I ended up with all his navigation, the whole lot, all his programs, his teaching and everything from sextants. I've got the whole lot in a box at home. And with his very latest, just before he passed on, I was communicating with him because they wanted to teach it down Brookvale TAFE, and I got the okay that they could use his form. Right. So I've got all of that, and like, if the club wants it one day, or somebody, we can't throw it away.
No,
it's too valuable.
Wonderful archive.
And every person who did the course too, which is very interesting. So Gordon and I became great friends, marvellous friends, and I supported him all the way through everything. Towards the end there, when he had a bit of a falling out with the club, but when he put that machine together to IMS measure the boats, that was unbelievable.
Where do you see the sport and the club now? I mean, in the modern era, with modern boats with swinging keels and all singing and all dancing, how do you see that, as someone that's come through the ages, if I can say that nicely, where do you see the boats and the sport?
I see that we've gone a massive step backwards. Massive step backwards. The boats, when I was on the sailing committee, we had that terrible incident at the Sea of Japan where we lost, I think there was, I forget how many, where 16 people perished and the keels came off the boats and everything, and they decided that the IMS rule, or the IOR rule, had to go. So they came up with a new design, which they formulated into the IMS rule, and the whole idea was to stop people sitting on the side of boats, etc., which goes back to, I think it was 72, 73, whatever it was, I'm not quite sure, when Ted Turner had American Eagle here. Well,
72, yep.
He did, and when American Eagle was here, he wanted to keep it for another 12 months after the first event. And Peter Hill wanted to charter it. If that happened, it would have been, they would have had to pay duty on it, and that wouldn't happen. So I was fortunate enough to be given the position to go out and look after the boat, just because I knew Peter Bowker and a few other people, and so I could take the boat out once a month if I wanted to, which I never did. I took it out twice during the period I had the stewardship of it. And so Ted comes back and he says, John, he said, we're going to come into Hobart. He said, the boat looks great. We're all going to, we can sit on the side all the way down now. He said, then we'll bloody kill him. I said, sit on the side. Trevor Gowland, who was a very dear friend of mine, said, yeah, John, he said, they're going to sit on the bloody side. I said, well, I'm not going to bloody sit on the side. You've got to be off your rocker. How'd you sit on the side? You'd be freeze to death. Anyhow, away they went, and that's where the rule changed. And to me, it's the greatest backward step that yachting ever did, and it still is, because to me it doesn't make the boats safe at all. I can recall when I had a short haul, not a short haul, a cruising committee meeting. It wasn't a committee, it was a meeting on yacht designs and everything else. And we had Scott Judson and one of the other top designers, I'll think of his name in a second, and I posed the question.
David Lyons, was it?
No, I'll think of his name in a minute. Anyhow, I said, what would happen if a yacht was hurtling downwind with the crew on the windward side, the field fully canted on the windward side, the water tank full on the windward side, and the steering went askew as you did a Chinese jibe? Oh, that would be serious. That would be tough. The bottom line was they finished up saying the bloody boat would sink. Well, that answers the question for everybody, and the particular Commodore at the time really fainted. And but that's what you've got to educate people. After that Sea of Japan event and the change of the rule, they did a very big investigation on seaworthiness of yachts, and they came up with the best design yacht was a metre style with quite heavy ballast and not huge ends and a lot of overhang. Now you take a modern yacht today with its plumb bow and a yacht with a nice original bow section. When you go down a sea, it hasn't got a big fat back on it, pushing it down the wave if it starts to go too quick. It'll just flop. Whereas as it goes down into the water, a yacht with a lot of overhang will pick up the buoyancy, so the waterline of the boat would be quite a few feet wide, a metre at least wide or more, 1.5 metres wide. That's where the waterline is, and that is what makes the boat more seaworthy. And you're not looking in, if you get your boat there, and how are you going to get it back where you haven't got the people sitting on the side? That's just, to me, it's lunacy.
Yeah. You mentioned just briefly the short haul division. Now I think you were the instigator of that at this club, weren't you?
That's right.
And that was brought in for people who didn't want to go red hot IOR racing on a Saturday. It was just you'd go off the heads and do offshore sailing, right. But I think it was without spinnakers, and you'd do sort of reaching courses.
That's
while
right.
The red hot boys were doing their IOR racing.
That's correct.
Yeah.
What happened, that started in... I brought a little thing along because I was always very proud of this record of Sharana here. That started in 1970. That started in 1982, 83, when we. It was put together. Peter Rysdick came back from Europe. And he was a very wonderful contributor to the club, a very wonderful man, in my opinion. And he mentioned that overseas, that non-spinnaker racing was taking over very, very well, and it was getting very, very popular. And I thought, well, doing the handicap, I can't really race, so I missed a couple of seasons racing. Not really, I just did the long race, I went with other people and things like that. And I thought, well, why don't we try it here? And so I mentioned it to the sailing committee, and they rolled their eyes. I said, look, if you can get 10 boats, we'll do it. So I put it around, and we ended up with 28 boats. So then we had to reach out, because I said it's going to be a reaching course. not a working course, because we want all of the older boats to come along, and we had big old ketchers wanted to do it, and all of these things. So we started the short haul, and it's still going and going from strength to strength. At one stage we were the strongest division in the club. So it's still good. The record we had was 25 point score wins in Sharona, and 15 were on international rating. So I was quite happy with that. And we're racing some new boats too. And
today you're still a boat owner?
I have Electra. The last racing we did in Electra was, the last full season we did in Electra was in 2004-2005, and we won the IRC overall, and as well as the autumn and spring.
And she's a Coal 43.
It's a Coal 43. It's a proper yacht, a safe, proper.
And you do a fair bit of cruising in her?
We do a lot of. We've taken the two of Margaret and myself takes up to Hamilton Island, and we can race up there and bring it back, just the two of us. Or if you take 3 or 4, it's wonderful. So it's a good yacht. Other people that I recall having great times within this club were Vic Meyer. Vic, I sailed on Solo quite a couple of times with Vic. I brought him back from New Zealand once with him, and people didn't get along with Vic, and they used to say, "Oh, he's a hard man," and etc. But he wasn't. He was a wonderful person, provided you didn't talk to him much, and when you did, you agreed with him. Everything went well, and I can remember. Billy Smith and myself and Solo used to go up to Malcolm Campbell's place at Flint and Steel. We used to go up there, 2 or 3 times a year and have a great time up there. And so we became very, very, very friendly. And Solo, when he decided to change it into a yawl, he turned around and welded he came down, McNeil and Sheeran used to make the sails for him. He came down, he said, "John, give us a hand, I'm going to change the fitting on the head sail." So I said, "All right, okay." So he got his electric welder out, went down, he said, "Now you hold this light here and I'll go over and have a look at it." So I'm holding the sheet on the side of it. It was cutter rigged, holding the sheet there. He said, yeah, move it back a bit. Yeah, okay. He came over and he welded the bloody fitting on there, and there it's still on the boat. I thought, oh, that's interesting. And the other thing he did was, because when the weather used to get hard, we used to hank sails on. And the hanks were never strong enough. So what he did, I gave him a hand, and he put stainless steel shackles on the head sail, and they were all served. And I used to have Sharona opposite him, and he really wanted to sell me Sharona Solo, and I was going to buy it, and I had a buyer for Sharona, and Smithy from down at Botany Bay, and everything was arranged, price was arranged, and then along came David Lewis, and he offered Vic more money, and I was going to pay 30,000 for it, and I was going to get 28 for Sharona, so it was pretty good. Well, I thought, $2 grand, and I got Solo with everything that goes with it. And so what happened? Vic said, "Oh look, he's offered me 35,000. I said, "Well, I can't afford it, Vic. There's no way." He said, he came back. He said, "He's offered me 40 now." I said, "You're joking." He said, No. So I told him I still want to, you're still in the picture because I'd like you to have the boat. And he said, "He's offered me 48." I said, "Jesus Christ, that's a lot of money." And he said, "Yes." He said, "So I've told him he can have it." So, oh dear, so that was the end of Solo for me. So I was going to have a sailing school in those days. Yes.
Well, John, it's been a wonderful life you've had here at the Cruising Yacht Club. You have been a wonderful contributor. Thank you for your time, and enjoy your future sailing.
I shall, and I have great memories of the club here. and we still contribute. We've got the started this MMM course going now for hopefully to help people at sea. It's the MMM is there to educate yachts people on how to look after themselves, because there's nothing more isolated than a yacht at sea. You can't get any help for hours, and if you've got somebody there in a very serious condition, and when you look at the number of injuries and accidents and illnesses we get on yachts today, we really do need that educational program. So that's my big driving force today. There's lots of other things I could tell you, but I think I've run out of time.
Go on, John. John Keelty, thank you.
Thank you.